Have you ever struggled with money problems? Have you struggled with money problems most of your life? If you have, then you're in a similar camp as I am. And this video is titled My Troubled Relationship with Money, because that's really what it's been most of my adult life. And this is a hard video for me to do, and I had to really think about it. I'm not talking about all the money stuff to do in my life in one video. It's going to be spread across several videos, but got to make a good start here at least. So, money problems are strange. Let's just say this. If you live in the United States or any other Western country, you probably already know this. Talking about money is often a taboo in our culture. In other words, people don't like to tell other people how much they make. That is changing a bit, I've noticed, but overall, for most of my life and probably long before I was alive, people did not talk about how much money they had, how much money they made, how much money they had saved, how much, they just didn't talk about it. And people also didn't want to admit how little money they had often. So money has always been a big taboo. People will talk about sex before they'll talk about money. It's very weird to me, but that's the truth. Anyway, I'm very open about it. I'm very transparent about it. I always have been pretty open about it with some exceptions in my life. But money has always been a big problem for me. And what provoked me doing this particular video today, I said that I think I told you that most of my videos, the long videos that I do in February, are going to relate to money in some way. I'm passionate about the topic because first of all, I'm trying to find a way to turn it around, but also it just fascinates me anyway. The other day, what really provoked this was that I was thinking about the fact that most of my adult life, I have never earned what I really probably felt like I was worth. In other words, I never made a lot in any job I ever had. And that's even after I had 2 master's degrees and worked as adjunct faculty. And if any of you know what adjunct faculty is, it's faculty that works for very little money. So even when I was a bereavement counselor, I worked for a nonprofit. I didn't make a lot of money. I have never made a lot of money in my life. As well educated as I am, as intelligent as I would like to think I am, I have never been able to translate that into making money. And I've always had kind of an awe and admiration and kind of puzzlement over people that just seem to effortlessly make money. It just boggles my mind. I do know about the fact of attraction, the law of attraction, and how that if you have the right attitude and perspective, you can attract money to you. I have actually tried that at various times in my life. I'm sorry to say it has not worked. But let's go back to not the whole beginning, but let's go back a ways, because I want to explain to you why when you kind of get in the money trap in life mentally, how it's very difficult to dig yourself out. And see if you can identify with this, if any of these things apply to you. Now, first, I want to point out I've got green in the background, and I'm wearing green for the color of money. So, of course, those of you who come from other very civilized countries know you probably have more colorful money than just green, but in the United States, it's all green. Talking about my background a little bit, I was not raised with money problems. That's the interesting thing. I was raised fairly privileged, and I don't mean wealthy. I was not wealthy, but very comfortable. Back in the day when I was growing up, I would have said that we were upper middle class. My father was a military officer. We had everything we ever wanted. After my father died, we were even more comfortable financially. And so I never lacked for anything. I never wanted for anything, really. If there was something I really wanted in my life, I just basically had to ask. And I had all the clothes I wanted. I had lessons for things I wanted. I just was never told we don't have the money for it. Okay. So you would think that I grew up with a mentality of plenty. Like I would have thought I would have thought somebody in my situation would have grown up thinking, oh, there's always going to be money. Well, I did. The problem is, as the old saying goes, money doesn't grow on trees. And you have to earn it somehow. And the big problem when I was growing up is that I was never taught about money. I was given things. Now, admittedly, I did earn an allowance and I actually had to do things for that allowance. So I did have some idea that you had to work to earn some money. But I also just got things even when I asked. So even though I had this a little allowance going, I still got anything I really wanted. And, to me, my mother, they didn't have cash machines back then when I was a kid, by the way, but she was my personal ATM. I'm just saying that. She was. And I'm not proud of it. I basically was spoiled. And but she willingly did that. She willingly shelled out whatever she wanted to for clothes for me or whatever. So the thing is, she never taught me about money. Now, I don't really blame my dad for that because he died when I was 10. And, normally you're probably not going to have serious conversations with kids about money until they're probably around 10 or 11. So the thing is, it wasn't that I wasn't responsible at all because I got a job when I was 16 at a department store. It was my first job. And I really worked through the last couple of years of high school. I usually had a part-time job for about half of my college time. I didn't go into debt for undergraduate college because I did get veterans benefits because my father had been killed on active duty. So at least that paid for my college and my mother didn't have to go into debt for that either, which was good. But I did work part-time for a couple of years out of college, and so that gave me extra spending money. Now, admittedly, my mother would still send me like an allowance every month when I was in college, but she never talked to me about money. She never explained to me. Now, I think part of that was because although my mother was handling money pretty well, at that point in her life, I don't think my mother really fully understood money. She had not worked since she was in her early 20s. She had money and didn't really have to work for it. So I'm not sure that she really fully understood what you have to do to manage your money in some respects. So she never really talked to me about it. She never got across to me the importance of saving part of your paycheck aside. So 10% of your paycheck should go directly into savings. Never told me about anything like that. And later on, and years later, although my mother was very reluctant to apologize for a lot of things in her life, the one thing she did apologize to me was that she had never really taught me about money. So I think she did know and did take some ownership for that she had not really explained it. Well, anyway, by the time I'd gotten out of college, the one thing I was really guilty of is if I had money, I spent it. So whether I earned it or got it from my mom or whatever, I didn't have any concept of holding money back and saving for an emergency or something like that. I just always spent. And I was a big spender throughout probably a lot of my 20s and even a lot of my 30s. I basically spent money. So although I would get it, I would earn it because I had various jobs all that time. I would earn it, I'd still just spend it. I had no idea of, oh, you should save this or save for a particular thing. I, bought things on credit. When I was married to my first husband, we had excellent credit, and I basically had a bunch of charge cards, and that's what we did. So I am not proud of any of this. It really screwed me up in life. And then couple that with the idea that even when I was working, I never really earned a lot. So if I had ever had a job where I earned, even back then in the 80s, let's say I had a job that I made $60,000, $70,000 a year, which would have been a lot back then, I probably would have just spent it all, honestly, because I had no concept of doing, the responsible thing with money and staying out of debt and all of that stuff. So I didn't really get into a lot of trouble with it, though, mainly because I inherited money from my grandmother when I was 30 years old. And it wasn't a huge inheritance by any standards, but it was bigger than a bigger chunk of money than I'd ever seen. And I didn't run through it right away. I was married to my first husband when I got it. And I did the first year, I actually did some responsible things. We bought a different house and rented out the house we were living in. I bought some land because I eventually wanted to move to Arizona, which I ended up doing in the 90s. But I did some smart things with the money. I didn't just go out and blow it on, buying a fancy car or a bunch of clothes or anything like that. But still, after about 6 years, between getting a divorce and giving my husband, my ex-husband, then the newer house we'd bought and that sort of thing, I ended up pretty much losing most of that money over about 6-7 years. And so I was back to, scrape and buy, basically. And when I was married or even in a relationship after that, I was in a 13-year relationship after my second marriage, I still always worked, at least part-time, and I always made my own money to pay my own bills. And so it wasn't that I wasn't responsible at all. It was just that I never made a lot. I always had a lot of fear about ever being able to totally support myself off my own income, because everything I'd earned up to the time I was 40, I would not have been able to support myself. Even the full-time jobs I had, I did not make enough money. And that was very scary to me, actually. And I remember how I felt at the time. Now, the reason I'm telling you this is this kind of, maybe you'll identify with it, but it set the stage for future money problems, which I'll go into probably in the next video. But I think it's important to recognize that if you don't start earning good money by, let's say, the time you're 30, you start feeling like there's almost like an invisible barrier to you. It feels like you're never going to be earned the amount of money you think you either deserve or you need or any of the above. And so it's a very difficult place to be. And I can say now that, it's interesting now that I'm doing YouTube and not yet monetized, of course, the thing that it triggers that whole thing for me, because it's like here I've put in a year and a half of working on something and I'm not getting paid for it, which just kind of brings up that old wound, that old thing in myself, which is like, gee, you never get paid for what you really do. So it's kind of perpetuating itself. Now, I'm hoping, obviously, at some point in time, I will be earning an income, at least part-time, off of YouTube, and maybe that will correct that issue. But it is a big issue for me, and I have a feeling I am not alone in the world on this. There are a lot of people in this situation where you might even be well-educated like I am, and still not earning what what you should be earning. It's a difficult situation. It really plays with your mind. It really is a mind, game. And it really messes you up. So that's part of the reason money has always been a problem for me. And I've always had a troubled relationship with it. It has always felt like, some sort of sick relationship where I'm really into money and money's like just not that into me. That's what it feels like. Money is just not that into me. So stay tuned. I'll be talking about this more, but it hopefully gives you something to think about if you've had a problem with money in your life. Just for those of you who have not watched my channel before, I am 69 years old. I am retired. I live on Social Security of about $1,250 a month. I live in low-income senior housing. I'm surviving on this. I get by okay. I get benefits so that, for medical, and I get a little bit of food stamp money, not much, like 60-something dollars a month, but I get by. And so I'm not complaining about that. I'm actually very grateful that I can survive on that. But it is just surviving. It's not really thriving in the world. There's a lot of people in my situation. I know there are. There's a lot of seniors that are living in poverty in this country. Obviously. So anyway, stay tuned until next time. Be well, be kind, Keep moving forward. And before I end it completely, please drop a like below if you've made it this far in the video, and subscribe to the channel if you have not yet done so. Really helps me out. Until next time, take care. Bye.